So when I talk about the AAPI community, I do see a lot of resilience, a lot of creativity with food, with dance, with music, and with the way they care for their children.
As we continue to celebrate May's Mental Health Awareness in AAPI Heritage Month, today we'll be talking about the Asian American and Pacific Islanders' perspective on the topic of mental health. And last week, we had a lovely forum to discuss my experiences within the Black community. And next week, we'll be back with the Latino community. But now I welcome our guests once again with Juan and Joanna. Welcome back, y'all. Joanna, how you feel about this? It's your time to share.
Hi, Kim. Well, first, I really appreciated the space we shared last time. It was, I don't even have a word for it. It just lives within my body, that feeling of resonance and just connecting with the both of you. I really appreciated that. So thank you for this platform. I am a Filipino American who is an immigrant. So I did come from the Philippines, so now as a child. So I think that there's so many layers when we talk about the AAPI community. There's various communities within one community, right? And there's so many similarities, but also differences, what makes each specific community unique. And so for my experience, I'll be talking about my personal experience with not just within the Filipino community, but as a person who identifies being an immigrant, Filipino, and what that looks like, what that is experience.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think your role in this is so important. When I first started getting involved in advocacy efforts like 10, 15 years ago, it was diversity meant you have Black and Latino folk involved. And I remember there was the first meeting that I was in, I remember the corner that I was at, a person raised their hand and said, "What about the AAPI community?" And there was silence. Like nobody could figure out what to say because they thought they had checked off some boxes about, what diversity meant. So I think that being able to get your perspective on all this, especially the topic of mental health, is essential for all of us.
There's so much, I don't even want to say the word resilience because that's, unpacking that word is a lot. Similarly to how Kim said, like last time about, being a strong Black woman, especially when, I meet folks from the Khmer or Cambodian community, the word resilience, what they've dealt with, the Khmer Rouge folks who have faced, genocide within their own country, who had to flee their country as refugees so that their families could be safe, what that looks like. So I actually live in Long Beach, California, and Long Beach, California has the highest population of Cambodians outside of Cambodia. So when I talk about the AAPI community, I do see a lot of resilience, a lot of creativity with food, with dance, with music, and with the way they care for their children. In my particular experience in the Filipino community, it's also true. Um, for some of us, though, it's kind of nuanced. Especially when trauma happens in your community, because of people who traditionally were supposed to take care of you. Like, I know that was my experience. It wasn't all bad, but that's not to take away from the impact, right, of the trauma of those experiences and how they affect us, whether that be on an individual level or a community level. And I think that one way, we have healing and empowered communities is to be able to celebrate, yes, this is true and this is true. Coming to terms with my identity as a, Filipino, when I first came to America, there was some bullying going on. I remember folks like, um, touching their eyes, kind of making it more, slanted and saying ching chong to me. And I'm like, I'm not Chinese. And I remember the thought process as an 8-year-old child going, I come from a space where everyone looked like me. Yeah, I'm coming here and looking at everybody looks so different. Yet, you know, the ignorance right now is on the other side. I felt like it should be me, like, you know, but yeah, that was my first experience. I think my first friends were also Filipino, so that was interesting. Like looking back, like, hey, um, those who look like me tended to befriend me first. But that's not to say that, I didn't grow to have other friends. I just remember being really excited about learning, trading lunches with kids. I would talk like something my mother made, and another kid would actually want to eat that. That to me it was really both experiences were I've had both basically, like both negative and also eye-opening and full of joy.
I love that. And, Joanna, you talked about um, food and what food means to you and the culture and music. And it was touching me because, that connection of food in the Black community and music. What, what has that done for you in reference to mental health? How has that supported you in your community, in your family?
You can. I think largely, when we think about food and dance and music, it's like celebration, right? Gathering. And that can mean also connecting. So the things I didn't have to like always be on a cognitive level, if this is happening or this is what I have to deal with. It's being in that present moment. So especially growing up, that meant, just being able to let my whole nervous system relax. I didn't have the languaging, but that also helped me really not disconnect from the negative things that were happening, but to me, it was a focal point of, this is something of that's my identity. This is my culture, and I get to enjoy it right here, right now with these amazing people. And share laughs and music when you're listening to it, when you're watching a movie. It's it's a form of storytelling. It's a form of sharing an experience, whether that be on an emotional level, right? Or a story that's happening. And I think that helped me a lot of not thinking in a black and white level as far as my whole culture. I get to enjoy so many aspects of it and share that with people I want to connect with.
When you said that you were in an environment with people that look like you, then you changed to another area and you begin from clothing to language to music to food and all that. It can be very intimidating, I guess, more often than not, because you're adapting. So I'm curious, like, as you grew up and eventually you became involved in the world of mental health, behavioral health, and all of this, what would you say has been some of the changes for embracing that diversity? You mentioned some of the unfortunate things that happen with stereotypes and, gestures that people would make. What kind of changes have you seen throughout time that let you know, hey, there's still work that needs to be done, but we got to appreciate what we've gotten so far?
Thanks for that question, Juan. I love that. Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of strides, especially in the dialogue about mental health, right? And that how it affects us as people and individuals and communities. Um, Growing up, like when I was in high school, there was a social worker um, from like an Asian American, program, and he started a group of us to gather us, and we created the Filipino like a student forum, right? And that was one of the first experiences I had of, these are specific to my community of these teens, maybe these high school students gathering to talk about issues that are important to us. So that was my first encounter, right? And I didn't know yet what my career path would look like, but I think that had such, an empowering piece. It was like a seed of being able to, hey, you can do that. And also in the community of mental health, when they do have things like the Asian American Hope and Recovery Conference that they had early on in my career, and being like a speaker or having a workshop and learning from the other AAPI community, being able to see and share space with those individuals. I think that really impacted me. And now on this side, being able to provide spaces for people to have that platform, I think I'm more intentional about, hey, speaking with somebody and, not just choosing my words, but in the way that I'm speaking to connect and making sure, am I hearing you right? And just not generalizing because this was my experience. And so now I'm like looking at everything through that lens.
So, Joanna, in the last episode, I talked about how George Floyd uh, made a serious impact on the Black community, more so than I think any of us realized. How it hit us so hard, and I know why personally, because we had watched so many Black and brown uh, men and boys and humans being killed and for some people it was their first time, like, oh wow, this is really going on, this is happening. And I know how that opened up so much for us that it was so hard just to unpack. So my thought was, in reference to what you had to go through, you mentioned about bullying and how young kids were making fun of you. We all just went through something that I don't know if your community is still going through this, but just the racism with COVID, and I don't think we're through that. COVID is still, just because we've got a vaccine doesn't mean we're through it. We're still just not where. How and is this still impacting the community?
I think, in my experience, it's not like a specific point, but a lifetime, walking and talking and experiencing life as an Asian woman. Um, so what that looks like for me specifically, beyond the bullying, and then now, growing into an adult, woman, and I'm a mother as well. So I'll give some examples, right? I went to a car dealership with a white male colleague. He he was the one purchasing the car. I said, hey, you know what? I've always bought my cars like cash up front. I've never been through a dealership. Can I tag along and maybe learn a little bit about the process? So I did. And so he's asking them the questions. He's telling them what car he's looking for and everything. And they look at me and they say, it's the car for her. The next employee, it's the car for her. It's like, okay. And then another specific instance is, I just moved. I just got a fridge. The order is in my name. My partner happens to be here. I had to leave a couple hours for work. So, I had my partner stay. So just in case it arrived, so it arrived. The two men who brought it, installed it and everything, all good. They know it's me because I'm on the signature. They asked for my signature. But as they're talking about the fridge and, the setting and everything, he's talking to my partner, not me, even though I'm the one who opened the door. Things like that, little things like that over time piles up. I used to run a peer run respite program. Some of the comments that were directed at me when meeting me, wow, you're so pretty. Wow, you're so petite. Wow, you're so young. You're meeting a professional. These comments, they're just out of place. So just over time having that and, having like the stereotypical kind of like, you have to be a kind of a submissive, soft-spoken Asian woman who's like really zen. And if you fall out of line out of that, you're over emotional or, too sensitive for some reason. But just those things, I think over time and adding on top of that, like the hate that has happened, more recently, and like coming from a background like the Philippines, I don't know if people are aware of our culture, being colonized by Spain and America and the Japanese occupation. So there's so many layers to our identities and where they intersect as well. Um, it's really interesting to see. So sitting down like this, it doesn't happen often for me, so it's so refreshing and, being able to actually tell this. I haven't said this out loud ever.
How does it feel to say it out loud?
It's a lot, but I'm really actually really glad. And I mentioned earlier about like platforms. I'm hoping, if anything I've said resonated with anyone, that they can feel free to either reach out or just sit in that moment, identifying also for themselves, right? How that's making you feel, sensations within your body that live in our body that we don't even recognize. Being able to, when you talk about self-care, Kim, I think that's important for me too. And just recognize like, what I need at this moment. And right now I have what I need. I have amazing colleagues I get to share this space with, and I have my water. I'm feeling good. Thank you so much for asking, Kim.
And thank you so much for sharing that. So I live in Puerto Rico, and a lot of people don't know we actually have a fairly large Asian American community in Puerto Rico. The amount of normalized racism and stereotypes that exists, and more often than not, the response is, "Yeah, I'm used to it." When you see things happen in social media that in 2023 you would assume like, oh, something is going to happen, and you just see laughter. You just see like, well, of course you're going to make fun of that. It's like nobody's looking at that going, no, that's actually wrong. That should not be accepted. But it's because it's those people. Like I'm people look at the Latino communities, like in the case of Puerto Rico, I'm the majority, right? The percentage of people that look like me are far more than that of the Asian community. So because it's like another category, it's okay to make fun of them. It's okay to stereotype because I've been used to that. And we sometimes use that as an excuse. Like, now you're going through what I did, but I'm the one provoking it. I'm the one causing it. But I don't want that, right? So my question to you would be, somebody that is listening or watching and is not part of the AAPI community and is maybe feeling somewhat uncomfortable about something that they've said, something that they've shared, but they want to listen and learn, how can they become a better ally for the community?
I know even in my community, like I've stood up, right? Like because there's a lot of colorism in the Filipino community as well, and different things like homophobia or I don't even want to say homophobia, but like you kind of said, like the joke, like being able to laugh at it. So I think when it comes to being an ally, it's just recognizing that people are on different levels of learning, and recognizing where you are on that, right? And it might be uncomfortable at first when you recognize that for yourself. Okay, what is this feeling? What is it bringing up for me and why? I think it's not going to be like a one size fits all answer or like a here's how, prescriptive kind of model, but really like as we talk about healing and empowered communities, um, the questions are so important. Like right now we're having like a series, right, a dialogue. It's not so much always about like the answers, but the way we're looking at the question. Not just looking at the phrasing, but the intention behind it, asking those questions, I think is a great place to start, within, and also then which communities do I need to listen to more? And, what would be my purpose, my intent in doing that?
I was just thinking about what you said and how colorism affects many communities of color. It's unfortunate because this is so systemic. It's very global. It anti-Blackness and anti-brown exist all over the world. And for us to be able to talk about in these spaces helps to let people know they're not alone. It helps to be able to say, what can I do? Because like one said, it's never okay to talk about the other. It is to be able to say, I see you, I see all of you, and all of you is perfect and beautiful, and that you matter. Because generational trauma exists with every group of people, no matter where you are in the world. And this adds another layer to it, because we all have our stuff. But then to add racism on top of that, and sexism on top of that, which you have shared with us, oh, I'm just taking a deep breath. I know Juan asked a great question about allyship. What's your personal thoughts? What's your takeaway? You're talking to somebody right now that's listening to you.
Even though we're talking to each other through a screen, even though we're on this topic, I don't feel like you're looking at me, hey, she's an Asian woman, and here's my like thoughts on that, and here's what I've known in the past. You're really here with me in the present moment, both of you, recognizing that I'm a human being. I have these set of experiences. I identify as an Asian woman, but you're here with me right here, right now, like not having this sort of idea of what I need to say or who I should be. You're just like recognizing, sorry, that brought a tear to my eye, by the way. Just how beautiful it is to sit in a space, like to share this, but also not to have like this set of beliefs be like thrusted upon me, like just you're opening up the space for me to be authentically who I am, without judgment. And I really, really appreciate that.
Well, I know one thing, your voice matters, your story matters. Juan, this has been a beautiful conversation. What do you say, my friend?
It really has, and I think every conversation when you open up your curiosity and open-endedness of just accept the information that's coming, because I think more often than not, whenever we hear about another community's perspective in life, there's a small part of us that's looking to either be defensive or fight back because I may have done something to harm that community. And I may not tell you, but there's that level of uncomfortable presence that's happening that makes me say, well, thank you, but that's just kind of how we act. You know how we are, right? We normalize so much our incorrect behavior with others, but we don't like it when it happens to us. And I think the fact that the three of us represent key communities, and as you both mentioned, we can add colorism and sexism. Like, you can pile this up. It's not three communities. There's like so many sub parts of this that you have to understand. It's far more than just, hey, I'm cool with those people, or hey, I have a black friend, so I can't be racist, right? I have a Latino friend. I love salsa. I love listening to salsa and merengue. It's great music.
Or my children are black. I can't be a racist.
So thank you so much. I have been loving hearing both of your perspectives and excited for what's to come.
Well, I love that we're giving ourselves permission to have these uncomfortable conversations. And, it is to allow ourselves to lean in. And it's okay. It's totally okay. That means that, we got some work to do, y'all. And we're going to get there. Being uncomfortable, we're okay with that. Just lean into it. How do we get uncomfortable? Do the work. What does the work look like? Well, it's going to look different for you and for me. But I'm hoping that these conversations that we're having will allow you the opportunity to explore that. And guess what? We're going to come back and we're going to hear more, but it's going to be from Juan and the Latino community. So I'm excited to hear about that conversation as well. So again, thank you for joining us. This is Kim Ewing and my good friend Juan and Joanna. And until next time, goodbye, y'all.